Welcome to Old Fashioned Finance, the podcast that mixes cocktails and high finance. I'm your host, Jason Demland, and I am joined, as always, and in the future, by my good friend and fellow money muddler, Caleb Frankert.
Jason, can a podcast about finance be entertaining?
Not without alcohol.
Well, all right, let's mix it up.
Welcome back to the podcast show.
I missed it.
I believe our listeners probably missed it. I sure as heck did.
I think you did a phenomenal job last week, by the way.
Thank you. It was
really
weird.
Did. There are not many people who can carry a show. I mean, Rush, Ben Shapiro, Jason Demland.
Yeah.
I listened to you for the full 28 minutes and whatever. Yeah, it was good. I think you did a nice job.
Thank you.
Good job, Jason.
You're too kind. Shucks, Caleb. There was way less laughing and there was almost zero high-fiving.
Well, almost.
So we've done better in the high-five department.
Yeah.
Than I did solo.
It's good to be back. This is my first podcast of the year.
2022.
I missed the first podcast of the year. Actually, yeah, I've missed a couple of podcasts since we've been doing this, and I really, really do miss it. So I'm glad.
It's fun. It's
glad
good
to be
sit
back
here
at it
and talk to you. Force ourselves to have a drink we maybe wouldn't normally have, and talk about a finance topic that we definitely do talk about.
We do
often.
Yeah. I guess let's set up the episode a little bit today. You elaborated to a drink that we probably wouldn't normally drink. Mm-hmm. I hadn't heard about it until someone sent me a link, so I know I wouldn't have made it without this here podcast.
We said we would shout out Kristen.
Kristen, we should.
Who is an avid listener, probably the biggest fan of this show. She listens to it all the time. She has to.
I heard her listening to it earlier, and I sometimes don't recognize our voices. I'm like, will you shut that off?
Kristen works in our office at Blue Jay, and she heard us talking about our finance topic and took it upon herself to search a drink, and it's a great fit.
I haven't tasted it yet, but I'm excited for this one because it's got a lot of things that I like. So let's tie in the episode.
Tie it!
Brilliant, Kristen. Brilliant.
She nailed it.
This drink is called the Grandfather.
Indeed.
And it goes right along with our finance topic, which is...
grandfather clocks.
Yes. How to invest in them. No. How to Inherit an IRA is the title of the episode, but we're talking about inheriting funds. So grandfather, inheritance.
Sometimes
they go together really nicely.
Leaves you an inheritance.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
So these things, they fit really well together. I hope I like this drink. I think I will, based on what's in it.
Sure. Yeah, it seems very likable. So let's dive into that. We've got a great drink, a great finance topic.
We do.
Let's start with the drink.
Let's start with this drink. Jason, you were kind enough to bartend today. What we're drinking here, the Grandfather, is comprised of a lot of things that I like.
Yes, lovely things.
And this was an easy one to mix up, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. The recipe,
one.
Anything that is, when you make multiples of something, I mix 3 up for the 3 of us here. It's nice when it's easily multiplied by 3.
Yes.
Like 1 1/4 ounce. What's that times 3? I don't know.
Well, this
could be anything.
Easy. Because 1 ounce of bourbon means 2 ounces of bourbon for 2. And 3 for, I think Jason's got 1.
Yeah.
Anyway, so enough of that.
That's math.
This is comprised of 1 ounce of bourbon, your choice, 1 ounce of Applejack, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, 1 dash of Angostura bitters, 1 dash of Peychaud bitters, and 1 Luxardo cherry.
Well, let's give it a taste. I haven't tasted mine yet.
All right, let's do that. Hey, cheers! Cheers to the new year.
Cheers. All right. It's definitely got a Manhattan flair.
It does.
But it's got that Applejack in there, which is an apple brandy mixed up spirit.
You know, it tastes exactly like I thought it would. However, I still am a little surprised by this one. I'm not sure what I think yet.
I got to go back for more.
Yeah. Let's do that again.
All right. Let's try that again.
Hey, cheers.
Cheers. to the week 2
of the new year. All right, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like it, just to be short. It's a lot like a Manhattan. It's got bourbon instead of rye, though, so it's not as spicy. It's not as complex. I think that's supposed to probably be replaced by the apple brandy Applejack stuff. So it definitely is a little more apple-y.
Yeah.
It's a lot sweeter than a Manhattan. The sweet vermouth that we used is in a higher proportion than normal.
Well, no, not if we're using 2 ounces of, between the bourbon and the Applejack. 2 to 1 is what I generally mix up. You know what I think it is, Jason? I think it's the presence of bourbon in the Manhattan rather than rye. I would typically use a rye whiskey in a Manhattan, which is less sweet, more spicy. Which the spiciness of the rye plays really well with that sweet vermouth. Yeah, and this is our favorite vermouth, by the way. Oh yeah, the Carpano Antica that we're using here. My criticism of this is it might be a little sweet because bourbon is sweeter than rye.
Yes.
Applejack is sweeter than bourbon. Yeah. And then we got the sweet vermouth in there. I could use a little spice. I think it'd be interesting to try this with a rye instead of a bourbon and see what that does to it. Yeah,
I have a sweet tooth. I like it. It's very mild. So if you don't like the harshness that comes with a traditional Manhattan, maybe this is for you, especially if you're celebrating apples for some reason.
I'm not against it. I don't hate it.
Yeah, it's good. I've had a lot worse, that's for sure. And this is fun. It's called the Grandfather. Do you have any reason why it's called that?
No, I couldn't find any history on this one.
Me neither. I saw like 3 recipes after Kristen recommended this drink. After she said like seconds and seconds of Googling she spent on this. I tried to double check it. I just saw some corroborating recipes out there. But no history,
it was
no
pretty much
controversy.
all the same wherever you went.
Yeah, it's just a fun cocktail, I think. Yeah. We don't use Applejack enough.
No, I like it. I like Applejack. I think that this might be better with a rye, though.
We'll have to try it with a rye sometime.
Let's do that. Let's make sure we do that. For a drink that I had to put 0 thought into.
Yes, I love
it's
that.
It's a keeper.
Yeah, it is a keeper.
Oh, and by the way, I would say if you can't find Applejack, if you're trying to recreate this drink at home, apple brandy is a suitable replacement. Yeah. It's not as good.
That
Applejack is its
sweeter,
own thing.
Though. Right? Isn't Applejack apple brandy with other distilled spirits? Like, I think it's half and half.
We have made other drinks with Applejack versus apple brandy.
I've forgotten all the history of Applejack. I went into that. I remember there's a bunch of different names for it. Like
was it the Jack Rose
White
episode?
Lightning.
That was a long time ago.
The Jack Rose has Applejack in it. That's like the 2nd or 3rd episode of this podcast.
Yeah,
probably not a great episode. But we did talk about the drink.
I think.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. My heart will go on.
Yeah, you know what? I think that this one, the base is there. I think this is a good idea. It would be fun to play with this one a little bit and maybe do a little customization.
Yeah, it's a nice branching out on a classic tried and true combination of cocktail ingredients.
Yeah.
The Peychaud's bitters, too. I am a big fan of Is it Peychaud?
Peychaud?
Like, you got to say it like a Creole person because it's a New Orleans thing. Peychaud. I think. But I really like that. Those
Creole
bitters.
is basically like a Southern Frenchman, right?
Yeah, it's like it's its own thing. It's that French, that bayou, all that stuff coming together.
I like Peychaud's. I do notice now that we're talking about it, I am picking up that little bit of spice from the Peychaud's bitters. That just does have that little what's the word I'm looking for?
Je ne sais quoi.
The brain fog thing with COVID is a real thing, Jason.
But you're back now.
Yeah.
You just have the after effects.
Yeah.
Caleb, in a nutshell, it's a lot like a Manhattan, but you can tell there's bourbon instead of rye, and there's some appley stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's a grandfather.
I like it. I think
presumably grandfather would have drank this.
This is a good canvas. I think you could add your own flair to it and be all right. But you know what? That's kind of a Manhattan in general, isn't it? Just Absolutely. A really good old-fashioned drink. Not an old-fashioned drink, but, a good old-timey...
Standard cocktail
that's fun to play around with.
Yeah, and this is a good variation on it. And supposedly, grandpas everywhere drink it. Something else grandpas do is die. So, dang it.
You shouldn't do that.
No. That was insensitive. But they do a good... What is the proverb, Caleb? A good man leaves an inheritance to his children and to his children's children, right?
Yeah.
So a grandfather would be leaving an inheritance to his children's children and possibly his children. That's as good of a segue as I can come up with on the fly.
That's as good as we're going to get. So let's talk about that.
We're moving into how to inherit an IRA.
Yeah, so this, just to set this up a little bit, we're not talking about, making sure that you're the favorite grandson or the favorite son or daughter.
Yeah, there are good ways to inherit an IRA, and that's like be present with your family.
We're not talking about...
maybe become their power of attorney and put everything into your name. That's really sleazy. Don't do that.
Yeah. What we're saying is inheriting an IRA is a big event. Mm-hmm. And you if you're listening to this and you have a parent or a grandparent, there's a pretty good chance that at some point in your life you may inherit some type of retirement asset or an IRA. It's tough because it's typically a blessing. However, the way that you inherit it is usually, it's through a bad event. You have to lose a loved one.
You're not
typically
celebrating the fact that you have gotten this. Usually, it's a blessing. It can be humbling. You have mixed emotions.
A lot of emotions.
We don't want to let's pass right over that. This is like when I was talking about inheriting farm ground. There's emotions involved.
Right.
Somebody died if you're inheriting something. That's sad. So we didn't have this in our talking points, but it's a good idea to take a little bit of time to grieve before you make any decisions.
Absolutely. So this is, and I think the way we've kind of split this episode up, we do need to dive into the rules a little bit, and I think everybody that is familiar with how to inherit an IRA, the old rules, some things changed at the end of 2019, and there was big legislation. We've said that a few times. The Secure Act came about right at the end of 2019. But what happened right at the beginning of 2020 that we've been talking about for 2 years? COVID. And I had 2 questions from clients today that were answered in the Secure Act. And I'm telling you, these clients had never heard about it before because Secure Act came out, then we talked about COVID for 2 years.
It's true. In our world, the Secure Act was a big deal.
It's huge.
It's lots of tax implications, a lot of retirement savings implications from these rules that were enacted. And then it got totally usurped by the news coverage from COVID. Clients, people's
the stimulus packages,
changed.
All kinds of stuff.
A lot of stuff happened. So we'll revisit it a lot, I think, as time goes on. Most of these strategies relate to the Secure Act somewhere or another.
They absolutely do. So the idea of how to inherit an IRA, we're going to talk about. If you're in the position where you have inherited an IRA, here's what you need to do.
Right.
Okay. And I would say, going back to what you just said a little bit ago, the first thing is take a deep breath. Take time to grieve. Like anything that's worth doing right, you don't have to do it right now. And if you're ever pushed into a situation where someone wants you to make decisions while you're highly emotional, it's okay to take a step back. Okay?
Usually these things can wait a day, 2 days, many days.
Technically, they can... This is probably not beneficial in most cases, but technically they can wait until December 31st of the year following. Okay? So, that's the first bit of advice. Maybe I'm jumping the gun because we're going to talk towards the end of the program here about different strategies for withdrawals. But I think the first thing is take time to grieve, take care of yourself and your family.
It's good. It's a good idea to take months, really. If you've suffered, it's different maybe if you've been preparing for this for a while. But clients that I've had that experience a loss like this, it changes your whole world. So it's really a good idea to grieve first and realize that a big thing has happened. Death is a big event. So make sure you mourn. Make sure you grieve. Don't make decisions early because you're probably going to make a bad one because you're not thinking right.
You got to make sure that because there are big decisions to be made, that you are in the right mindset when you make those decisions, working with a financial advisor who gets that. You know, I would say that one of the things about our business is, unfortunately, we deal with death a lot. And I could see on a large scale how you could be kind of callous as an advisor to this over time because people die and assets need to move. But
we handle the nuts and bolts. We can turn into kind of robots.
We can, and sometimes that's a defense mechanism. But if you have inherited assets, take the time to grieve. Take the time to get in the right frame of mind and make sure you don't make some mistakes that we're going to talk about that are possible mistakes. So first, I know we're running a little bit over here on the intro part of this, but I want to talk about what changed just real briefly in 2019. Let's go back in time, get in our time machine and talk about what happened 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. If you inherited an IRA, typically everybody could do this. And you know, you and I have settled IRAs for folks, and we'd tell people there's really 3 things you can do. You can cash it all out and pay all the taxes now. You can take it over 5 years, but why would you put yourself in that in that box, I guess, and take away your flexibility? Or you can stretch it out over your life expectancy. The stretch IRA. 9.9 times out of 10, the stretch IRA was the way to go. if you
Very
inherited
popular.
an IRA from someone who passed after 2019, unfortunately, the stretch IRA is not an option for most folks.
The stretch IRA was a great option. People use it
Absolutely
all the
was.
time. That's why you would see grandparents putting grandchildren on as beneficiaries to their IRA to bypass probate, to give a great legacy asset to their grandkids,
Yeah.
and then the grandkids get the benefit of tax deferral for a long time because their life expectancy is a lot longer.
Right.
That's gone now. It's gone. Secure Act just killed the stretch IRA.
In
It's
exchange for the required minimum distribution age for folks going from 70 and a half to 72.
Yeah.
So that's what was talked about was,
Right.
hey, you don't have to take withdrawals from your retirement accounts till 72 now. Great. Where Uncle Sam giveth, he taketh away big
Well,
time.
they're trying to increase tax revenue. Let's always
Absolutely.
remember that. IRAs are a tax strategy no
Yes.
matter what anybody says. So there's rules that impact it, and it all has to do with how you pay taxes, which is why the rules are important.
Yeah. So talking about the rules,
Yes.
let's talk about what the Secure Act did change.
What are the rules for a beneficiary IRA, Caleb?
Yeah, so a lot of this depends on whether you're we'll call it an eligible.
I got a gripe about these eligible designated beneficiary versus designated beneficiary.
Yes.
Who writes this stuff?
You know who writes
Yeah,
this
I know.
stuff.
It's
the
ridiculous.
IRS.
So let's just say you're an eligible beneficiary and you're a not eligible beneficiary.
Well, first, before we do that, let's talk about spouses.
Okay.
Because spouses are the ones who can actually, and this was the same thing for pre-2019. If you are a
Yeah.
spouse that inherits an IRA,
Yeah.
you can take that as if it were your own.
That's a special rule for spouses only.
Yes.
You can also do the other rules.
You can. But why would you?
Well, there are scenarios where it makes sense.
There are. Let's say you're not 10 years younger than your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
They pass away. Most likely, it's going to be beneficial for you to take that IRA over as if it were your own. Consolidation, you can put it all together. Let's say your spouse was taking required minimum distributions. You can hit pause on required minimum distributions if you're not at that age yet as well.
Yeah.
So there's a 9.9 out of 10 where the spouse is going to inherit that IRA and take it on as their own.
So we're not going to talk about spousal IRAs very much. If you're married and your spouse dies, first of all, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Secondly, you're probably just going to take that IRA as your own.
Yeah.
That's usually the cleanest solution.
Because you
Treat
have
it as
all
your
the
own
flexibility.
IRA.
Absolutely.
The IRS puts that rule in. That's actually quite good. It's incentivizing marriage. It's a good rule.
Yeah. What we're going to talk about now this is where the caveats come in, and we're going to differentiate a little bit between eligible designated beneficiaries and just regular old designated beneficiaries.
Yeah. Not eligible.
So first, let's explain that. An eligible designated beneficiary. These are the people that could still take the stretch IRA option with some asterisks.
Yeah, so these people are eligible to get preferential treatment over the new killing of the stretch IRA. Right?
Yes.
They can stretch out their distributions from the IRA over their lifetime based on a calculation from the IRS.
So there's a few situations if you are chronically ill. I don't know the IRS's definition of chronically ill. I don't know that they have a real definition.
As of the summer of 2021, they were still issuing guidance on this policy, and it was still confusing because they kept putting out contradictory information.
Mm-hmm.
So this could all still change, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
But as of right now, yeah, go ahead. We don't know exactly what chronically ill is.
If you're chronically ill, whatever that means, whatever is considered by the IRS as
I
chronically
think it means
ill.
terminal, but I don't know.
But no.
If it takes other IRA rules, that's usually what it means. But I don't know.
Chronically ill could mean a lot of things.
But it's not disabled because that's a separate category.
Yeah. You may be able to stretch that out over your life expectancy.
Yeah.
So if you're 50 years old and chronically ill, that's beneficial.
It is. You get
Permanently
special
disabled,
treatment.
okay? That's a little bit more clear-cut. If you're permanently disabled, there are a lot of exceptions to IRA rules if you're permanently disabled.
Yeah.
So you would get to still stretch that. If you are not more than 10 years younger than the decedent, so who passed away, let's say you're a friend of a friend.
Or a
and you
brother or a
inherit-
sister.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Then you may be able to, and I say may be able to stretch that over
Because you might
your
not want
lifetime.
to. You have the option. All of these have the option of taking the 10-year
Yes.
method, which is the new one.
Let's talk about everybody else. And this is what we see most of the time. Children inheriting IRAs.
Yeah.
So a non-spouse, more than 10 years younger, not chronically ill, not permanently disabled. Oh, I
Not a
left one
minor.
out, by the
Not
way.
a minor child.
Yes.
If
Minor.
If you're a minor child, you can stretch the IRA
until
you turn 18.
Yeah, until the age of majority. And then the 10-year window, which we haven't alluded to yet.
Yeah, which is the new rule.
This is the new rule. So for everybody else and minors when they reach the age of majority,
which is 18 usually,
have 10 years to clean out their IRA that they inherit. Why is this so impactful compared to the old rules of the stretch, Jason?
Well, because, if you're somebody in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s and you stretch this IRA distributions out over your lifetime, you're going to take less out, usually, than this 10-year rule. 10 years is the deadline. That IRA has to be emptied, which means income taxes have to be paid within that 10 years. It's not getting stretched out. So in some situations, maybe it works out as a benefit. For the most part, though, this results in a boon to the IRS.
Yes.
They are getting that money now. Because imagine Grandpa passes away, and he's 85, and he leaves his IRA to his grandkids. He has $1 million IRA divided by 10 grandkids, $100,000 for each. Let's say they're all the same exact age. I don't know why they would be, but they are. They're all 10 years old.
They've got 10 more years of basically tax-deferred growth.
Well, in the olden days, they had their lifetime.
8 years.
Yeah. In the olden days, they had their whole lifetime. Now they have this new rule where they turn 18, and then 10 years later, they've got to
so for a 10-year-old inheriting it, they've got an 18-year clean.
Let's say they're all 18 then.
Okay.
They got 10 years.
They got 10 years.
Used to be they could get it over their lifetime.
Yeah, if you're 18 years old, your life expectancy is pretty long, meaning that money can continue to grow at a high rate of return, tax deferred, while taking very, very minimal distributions.
So people have used this strategy. This is how do you maximize the stretch IRA?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that did this when they were still of sound mind.
Yep.
And maybe they're not as much. They're not as savvy. This isn't a planning issue for our older clients.
Yes.
Because this strategy doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
You might want to rethink the best way to do it.
So when we see grandkids as beneficiaries on IRAs, red flag. It may still be an okay strategy, but we need to talk about it. So the idea behind all of this is, you say, why in the world would you leave a grandkid as a beneficiary and skip a generation? Well, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Most people pass away in their 70s or 80s. So most people's kids, when they're in their 70s or 80s, are in their 50s and their 60s.
Yep.
Jason, when do most people make the most money they've ever made and, as a result, pay the most taxes that they've ever paid?
In the years right before they retire, which happen to be their 50s and 60s.
So what you're doing is you're forcing distributions in their highest earning years, their highest tax paying years.
Yeah.
You're forcing distributions and a higher tax rate. So why would you skip a generation and go to the kids? What's the kids' tax rate?
It's lower. Caleb, you have to say your catchphrase. Work that tax code.
Work that tax code. It's been a while since I've said that.
You haven't been here.
It's true.
The reason that you skip generations is
people were working that tax code.
That's right.
You inherit an IRA that's $1 million. You're making the most money you've ever made, and you've got to take it out over the next 10 years. I'm sorry, like it or not, blessing or not, you have a tax problem, my friend. You have a tax problem.
So let's speak to those people. These are not spousal beneficiaries that don't fit those eligible criteria that we had. They're not a minor. They're a minor child. They can't just be a minor. They're not chronically ill. They're not permanently disabled. They're not more than 10 or less than 10 years younger.
Yeah.
Wait, more than 10 years
they're
younger?
Not more than 10 years younger.
That's so weird.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we all know what you meant.
Yeah, thank you. So not those people. Right. So grandkids inheriting an IRA is...
It can still make sense.
Let's discuss strategies.
Hey, you know what? Real quick before we do, one thing I noticed that we haven't talked about, we haven't drawn the line between traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. If you inherit a Roth IRA, important. Here's the thing. The taxes have already been settled up in Uncle Sam's eyes. Do you still have to clean it out within 10 years? Yes. I'm going to tell you the strategy there, unless you need money real bad, is always... let that tax-free train roll for 10 years and then take it all out.
It's an amazing windfall. Get as much tax-free growth as you can.
And we have talked about it in other episodes. Roth conversions, that's a good idea for IRA owner. This episode is meant for IRA inheritors.
That's right.
How to inherit an IRA.
Yeah.
The damage is done. You have a windfall. It's a blessing. It can feel like a curse as well. But yeah, I wanted to differentiate. This is why it's so much better to inherit a Roth IRA.
Absolutely.
Because if you're making $250,000 a year and you're paying a bunch in taxes, and then you have to take another $250,000 a year out to satisfy these distributions, I would rather, if someone's going to do you a favor, I'd rather inherit a Roth and not add to my taxable
So if
income.
you are a person that's planning on letting people inherit your IRA, a Roth is a lot better.
Yeah. But we are focusing in this episode on those who have inherited the IRA. And look, if you've inherited a traditional IRA and you go, well, why didn't they do it this way? Well, Roth hasn't been around for a real long time, and Roth conversions can be really delicate. So you can't just go, oh, okay, I'm going to flip everything to Roth.
Talk to a qualified professional about it.
Yeah.
So let's say, Caleb,
let's talk strategy.
Is it okay? Strategies. We want to talk about what you do if you inherit a traditional IRA from someone and you're not an eligible designated beneficiary.
Yeah.
What do
you're
you
everyone
do?
else.
We've got to lower taxes, Caleb. If you really need the money, it's a windfall. It's good. Pay off debt. We always say that. Get into your emergency fund. That's okay. But you got to, when you take money out of this inherited traditional IRA, it is taxable income.
Yeah.
You could mess yourself over real bad with taxes. So how do we avoid that?
You know, one of the first things that I go to is take a look at your retirement options that are available, right? Hey, tribute to John Madden there with the boom.
Who invented boom.
Who we just lost and maybe passed on some IRAs to folks.
He might have, but yeah, he was awesome.
I'm a Raiders fan. I got a soft spot for John Madden.
And
Plus, I
football.
grew up on video games.
Yeah, I like football video games, so I love John Madden.
Thanks for the boom there, buddy. So one of the things I do is look at your retirement plans that are available. What if you've been maxing out a Roth IRA and now you got to take a big distribution? That might take you out of the running. You might not be able to contribute.
You're disqualified.
To a Roth.
You have too much income.
And traditional IRA contributions may not be tax deferred. So I say, hold up. Let's take a look. Do we have a 401k? Okay, in 2022, we can now contribute $20,500 if we're under the age 50. It's new. It's new. $20,500 we can contribute to an IRA, and if you're filing jointly, times 2 if your spouse has a 401k. So if you're deferring that income and you're pulling that, let's say in the married couple's case, $41,000 from the inherited IRA, what we've done is we've taken the money from one tax-deferred pocket and put it in the other. It's a wash. It's a moot point. That's the first place I go.
Overfund your retirement accounts. And same,
So
you got
offset
403Bs, 457s. Max that stuff out.
Yeah, if you've got a deferred comp, if you're like a public employee and you can put as much as you want into a deferred comp plan, by all means, utilize the heck out of it. That might be your ticket for offsetting these distributions.
Absolutely.
That are required.
It's the easiest place to go.
Now, for someone who's got just a 401k and that's their only option, hey, we got $20,500 to work with. If you're above 50, it goes, what is it, another $6,000 for the catch-up that you can do?
Isn't it more than that for a 401k? I thought it was like 13.
You know what? I feel unprepared. It's newly 2022.
More. There's more.
It's more. You take advantage of those options. The second thing I've got on here, find every, and I'm going to emphasize, legitimate tax deduction. Okay? Now, that's pretty simple. Work with a good tax person. We're running out of time here. You could spread it out evenly over 10 years, but you got to look at your income situation too. Another thing you can do is say, I know I'm going to have a tax problem, and I'm going to delay, grow this as much as I can, and have one really bad tax year 10 years down the road.
You could retire early. You can do stuff. The way to lower taxes is to make less money. Talk to a financial advisor. We got so many great ideas about this.
There is one other situation we need to look into. If there's an estate tax situation, if this is a big estate over $12.06 million in 2022, make sure you take advantage of that tax deduction for paying estate taxes. Okay? I think it's a 35% deduction on estate taxes paid that can offset your distributions, taxability of your distributions. Doesn't matter that the estate paid it, you paid it. So
awesome. Caleb, this has been great. We are done. It's time to close out that tab.
It sure is. Thanks, folks, for having a drink with us this week. It's time to close out the tab. If you have a question or a topic you want addressed on the Old Fashioned Finance podcast, be sure to email us at speakeasy@oldfashionedfinance.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to share the show with someone you love or someone who needs a little money muddling themselves. You can stay up to date with all the latest actions by following us on Facebook and Instagram. Old Fashioned Finance is brought to you by Blue Jay Financial Group. That's BlueJayFG.com, produced by Podastery Studios. We've been your hosts, Jason and Caleb. Cheers. Buddy.
Blue Jay Financial Group, LLC, Blue Jay, is a registered investment advisor registered with the state of Ohio. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The presence of this advertisement on this podcast shall not be directly or indirectly interpreted as a solicitation of investment advisory services to persons of another jurisdiction, unless otherwise permitted by statute. Follow-up or individualized responses to consumers in a particular state by Blue Jay in the rendering of personalized investment advice for compensation shall not be made without first complying with jurisdiction requirements or pursuant to an applicable state exemption. All verbal and written content on this presentation is for information purposes only. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Blue Jay, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to other parties' informational accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with an advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation.